Well, I can't. I need to ask you how to say his name first.
Who?
Is Cuerdo? I'm going to say. Is Cuerdo that Brighton winger?
The Fantasy Football Tips Podcast with Mills, JP, Quigliarno, and Cliff.
Hi, you're listening to the Fantasy Football Edge podcast. It's game week 30. My name is Mills and I'm joined this week by JP. JP, the honour is all yours this week. You are the ever-present at the moment. So how's life with you, young sir?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Honoured to be here. Looking forward to some tips. Looking forward to the podcast. I actually actively look forward to it during the week. So I'm quite excited.
Yeah, I do too. Like the sort of setup and the process and the preparation is a little bit sort of arduous. Maybe a little bit more so for me than for you, but
probably more for you. Yeah.
Once you get on, it's just it is great. It's like, you know, good old friends being back together and having a good old natter about football. So
absolutely,
we are without Quigliarno today, so the honour is going to be all yours. But JP, I've got to start by saying that, you know, last week we had a little bit of a different format to the show. We tried to lighten it up a little bit. We brought in a couple of new features, and I've got to say, JP, that the feedback has been pretty good. I don't know if you've seen some of the comments, but
one or two.
Yeah, I'm just going to read a couple out because I think it's quite nice to get a bit of positive feedback. I had one from John Box over in America, and he sent in a message saying the podcast this week was the best one ever, including JP's 30-second speech. And then he quotes, "The only difference is he's Colombian and I'm English. Have me in stitches. Keep up the good work, John Box." So thank you, John, for that. I did email him back, which he was quite grateful of. But yeah, so that's a quote that could well go down in history, JP. And we had another one from Redcard 1989. Said, "Love this week's podcast. JP was hilarious. Great tips from all three of you guys. Keep it up." So JP, you're becoming a bit of a cult hero amongst the FPL community, it seems.
I'm doing all right, aren't I? I'm doing all right. And a quick question for you, Millsy: is Quigliarno not here simply because of how bad he was at Play Your Players Right?
Yeah, I mean, he was absolutely awful. I mean, I did, obviously, when editing it, I listened back to it, I couldn't believe just how badly he did. It was, I mean, he made the same error twice, but, you know, it's one of those. No, that's not the reason he's not here. He's genuine reason for absence today. So we'll allow him that, and hopefully he can listen in this week and get to grips with that. So we are going to bring Play Your Players Right back again. We are also going to have Ask JP. I mean, we couldn't not bring it back after last week. We've got Steal or No Deal, hopefully returning this week from, with yourself with that tip there, as well as all the usual stuff. And I've also got an announcement to make that is going to make people pretty happy. So that's all coming up. But let's kick things off, JP, with your Gary of the Week.
Don't mind if I do. So my Gary of the Week is mostly based on fixtures this week. And I'm going for Eden Hazard against Crystal Palace. Chelsea looked very, very poor against Man City. A lot of people criticised them quite heavily for their defensive approach. They need to bounce back, and this is a good opportunity at home to Crystal Palace, who just conceded 3 goals at home against United. I expect Hazard to feature heavily and score at least 1, if not 2 goals. So if you do have him, I think he's a nice differential captain choice this week.
It's an interesting one. I don't think there'll be that many people jumping on him.
No,
just certainly based on form.
No.
I mean, it's great that you pick him out just for the way that you pronounce his name. So I love that, just that alone.
Hazard.
Eden Hazard. I love it.
Eden Hazard.
But
absolutely.
Also, you know, Hazard was very critical. You know, he's actually come out himself, hasn't he, in the week and said that, you know, the performance and the approach from Chelsea last week purely wasn't good enough. So it will be interesting to see how he personally tries to bounce back from that. So it could be one of those genius shouts. You know, almost in the realms of long shot. But I think, you know, Crystal Palace did capitulate, didn't they, against Man United? Just when you thought United were going to lose there, they did come back late on and win. So it's a decent shout. I think, you know, why not? And Chelsea certainly need a result, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Where are you looking for your Xabi Alonso then?
So my long shot, it is quite a long shot, but I think with explanation it becomes slightly shorter. I've gone for Troy Deeney.
Okay.
I mean, we know he scored last week in a 1-0 win, I believe, against West Brom. Playing against Arsenal at the Emirates. I mean, they've been hideous, of late. Arsenal, absolutely horrendous. I feel for any Arsenal listeners right now. I really do feel your pain. Hashtag Wenger out, by the way. Troy Deeney has mentioned in the past how much he loves to play against Arsenal. He mentions that he can bully them because they're physically weak, and I think he's going to do that. I think he'll probably get a goal. So a little long shot. Not many people have him in their team. There's maybe one or two of the third choice striker, and why not? Little long shot, Troy Deeney.
I think that's a great long shot, actually, JP, because you're absolutely bang on. Not less than 1% of players have him in their team. He's 6.3 million, and he's scored 3 goals in his last 4 games, which is a pretty good return. He's actually getting a good run in the team at the moment. So, and the history's there, isn't it, with him against Arsenal? So, I think that is a pretty good shout. Right, JP, I've got a short announcement to make, and then we're actually going to mix things up this week. I thought, let's balance the show out. Let's have some tips, bring in a bit of humour, hopefully.
I think we should.
And then go back to a few more tips and sort of balance it out that way. So, but before we do that, little announcement, and I don't know if you're aware of this, JP. I don't think I've mentioned it yet.
No.
The podcast Extra Time is going to be no more. So it doesn't mean the show is going to be shorter or those features aren't going to exist. They will exist. It's just all going to be one nice, easy to listen to podcast. I don't think it'll upset our premium sort of followers that much because they get lots of extra content over on fantasyfootballedge.co.uk. But if I'm being completely honest, it will make my life 10 times easier just to edit one podcast rather than 2. But I think the podcast, it's all about a bit of fun, and I want everyone to get full access to it. So there's just going to be one pod. It'll still be available on iTunes and Stitcher, on the website, YouTube, all the usual places that we feature, but there'll just be one. So hopefully people will like that.
Wow. I feel like we're constantly evolving, Millsy.
Well, you've got to try. You've got to try. So
got to, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Got to change and grow.
And maybe it was the positive feedback that came back last week, and I just thought, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's just do this. So
I like it.
I'm sure Quigliano would have a word or two to say if he were here. He'd probably go against that, but he's not here, so we'll move on. So right, JP, I'm going to bring in players right now.
Good.
And
excited.
I hope so. I'm going to be honest. I was massively disappointed in Quigliano last week.
Oh, he was dreadful.
But I did think you were going to go a little bit further with it. So
yeah, I did. I think I shot too early with the Vardy shout. I did.
You got excited. You did get excited.
Yeah, I did. But I still, do you know what? I think I'd have done it even if I thought about it. So you win some, you lose some.
Okay. So try not to shoot too early this week. And
I won't.
We will. So there's 10. There's 10 to get through.
Okay.
So, and also I'd like to say I do still think, and John Box actually when he emailed me back said this, that he really liked the new feature in the sense that it does actually make you think a little bit about sort of how one player is performing against another, and you don't always look at players and compare them just on their points tallies, and it's probably not fair to do that 100%. But it does make you think. So I think there is some, it's not just for
massively.
Fun. Right, JP, I've actually made this doable today.
Okay.
So no pressure.
Okay.
But we're going to start off with Kyle Walker, who currently has 118 points.
Okay.
The next player out is Ospina, the goalkeeper at Arsenal. Higher or lower? Lower, you are absolutely correct. He has 1 point. Okay.
Wow.
So from Ospina, we're going to go to another goalkeeper, and we're going to go to Thibaut or Courtois. Higher or lower? Higher. You're saying higher. Okay, right. That's got you in nice and gentle now. That's 3 in. Well done. 7 to go. So he has 111 points, Courtois.
Okay.
Lewis Dunk at Brighton. Higher or lower? So central defender at Brighton. Remember he scored last week on my bench. Great, thank you for that. He scored an own goal when he was in my team the week before.
Oh wow, Lewis Dunk. Now this is a tough one because obviously
please don't cheat and look.
I promise you, I will not cheat. You can put me on the clock if you want. I promise you, there'll be no cheating here.
What I would say is 111 is quite a high score. Like
it is high.
For Courtois, that is quite high.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to say lower.
Okay, yes, you are absolutely right. Lewis Dunk, 73 points.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Next out, Daniel Sturridge.
It's got to be lower. He doesn't play.
It is lower, 29. Well done. Well done. You're halfway there, JP.
Here we go.
Right, next out, same team, Jay Rodriguez at West Brom. Higher or lower?
Higher.
Absolutely right, 74 points. And next out is Ander Herrera at United. Higher or lower?
Now, this worries me a bit.
Why?
This one's tough because lower.
JP, that was fantastic. 29 points. You're right.
Oh!
Yes, lower.
I thought it was close.
I think you might do this today. Now, I think you might get there. Right. This is the 8th one out. 3 to go, JP. Next out. So you got Ander Herrera on 29 points. Next out is Jesse Lingard.
Higher.
Higher indeed, 106 points.
Yeah, definitely.
9th one out of 10. David Silva.
Higher.
On 125 points. You are right. 1 to go. This is the last one, JP. We're breaking new ground here. Can you complete the run? Son at Spurs.
Oh, now that's tricky.
David Silva, 125 points. Son at Spurs.
Now, I think Son's an unsung hero, pun intended. He gets more goals than people realise and a hell of a lot of assists. Do you know what? I'm going higher, Mills.
You sure?
I think it's gonna be similar, but I think he's gonna be around that mark. I'm gonna say higher, just.
Yes, JP, get in there. He's completed the run, first time ever. And
wow. Wow.
What's
he on?
139 points. So.
Oh, I'm delighted with myself.
Very decent
punch.
Well done, JP. Please punch. And we'll be back once JP's calmed down with this week's side tips.
The Fantasy Football Edge Podcast. 90% drivel, 9% ego, and 1% tips.
Okay. I've got to tell you, JP's extremely excited here about his performance in Play Your Players Right. So, JP, the floor is yours with this week's side tips.
Well, looking at the fixtures, there's a few challenging fixtures. First of all, obviously, with Liverpool United, it's hard to necessarily pick out players that are going to perform well in that. It's difficult to know who's going to win. So I sort of went past that fixture and I worked my way down a little bit in some of the fixtures that I felt you got more sort of side tips that are likely to score points. First of all, I'm going to mention Glenn Murray at Brighton. Unsung hero, I've mentioned that twice tonight. 11 or 12 goals he's on. Playing against Everton, who have been heavily criticised recently. I think he could be a nice little third-choice striker there, and I think he could get himself a goal or two. Again, they look quite good to me against Arsenal. Again, I mentioned Chelsea. Hazard obviously is my Gary, so I can't mention him. But I want to mention Willian as a side tip. I think he's been electric recently. I think he's been brilliant. Even against City, when they were dreadful, he was the only player that looked good. And I think he's a nice option in your midfield, a sort of mid-range, mid-priced option to get you a couple of goals. Again, I've mentioned this player several times, but the likes of Jamie Vardy and Mahrez, they're playing West Brom. They've been hideous. Yeah. I think they're a good shout. Jamie Vardy, he could have almost borderline been a Gary against West Brom, quite frankly, at the moment. But obviously, being away and they're not the most dominant team, I didn't go with that. But as a side tip, those two looking quite nice. And then, of course, you can't look past Man City. I know they're playing on Monday night. They are away at Stoke, which sometimes can be a difficult place to go, but I think they're just so strong at the moment. You've got to look for the likes of Sané. He's come back really strong. I think he's a nice option. He's quite cheap as far as midfielders go in the Man City team. So you could go there. And I think the last one I want to mention is the Bournemouth Spurs fixture. I think there's going to be goals in that game. I really do. I think I mentioned Son. I know he was my final winning choice on the Play Your Players Right, and I think he could definitely get a goal against them. So he could be another sort of mid-range, mid-priced midfielder that we go for against Bournemouth. So that sort of wraps up my side tips. Bit unusual there, bit of a random bag.
I think it is going to be a little bit of a random bag this week anyway, in the sense that you've got a fair few Champions League fixtures that have gone on this week. You've got Europa League with Arsenal as well, and that's another reason. Like, sort of going back to your Watford pick earlier with Troy Deener, you know, depending on how Arsenal approach that game, which really they have to approach it quite seriously because it's the only thing left that they can win this season, and it will potentially be their only passage into the Champions League for next season. You know, they could be pretty done in by the time it gets to Sunday. Whereas Man City, looking at the team that they've put out tonight, other than Sané, the whole team pretty much has been rested. So, you know, they're going to be fresh. Spurs have got Juventus tonight, and they've got a very strong team. So there could actually be some weaknesses at the back there against Bournemouth.
Yes.
But I think they've got enough. I think they've got enough quality to certainly score goals against them. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Liverpool obviously have already done what they need to do and managed to rest players. It'll be interesting to see how they fare against United. So I think it is going to be an interesting week. I love the Leicester shout this week. I think Jamie Vardy's is probably a good pick, and you've picked them all out there. Glenn Murray as well. So good work there, JP. I've not really got anything to add to that, other than please allow West Ham to put in a decent performance this week, because I've got Adrian in goal. And I've got Arnautovic, who has done very little for me. And West Ham look absolutely dreadful at the moment. So
they do, and playing Burnley as well. And Burnley have been really good this season, haven't they? You know, we've got to say, Sean Dyche, I mean, probably deserves manager of the season, really.
Fantastic job there. You know, the other team to look at, you know, perhaps their away form isn't as good as their home form, is Swansea. You know, the Ayew brothers there look pretty decent last week. So it'd be interesting to see how they fare this week against Huddersfield. Right, JP, that's a good set of side tips there. We're going to go actually straight in. We're going to come back to you for Steal or No Deal.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I was rocking my brain for Steal or No Deal a little bit, and I had to ask you before the pod.
You were rocking your brain.
What did I say?
You said rocking.
Oh dear, racking. Sorry. My apologies, everyone. My apologies.
I mean, we do have a lot of listeners from overseas, and I would hate for us to, you know, some people that listen to this podcast from overseas, obviously English isn't their first language, and you know they probably do hear a lot of phrases that aren't, you know, standard phrases in their country, and I would hate to think that there's a lot of people walking around in Pakistan saying, I've been rocking my brain for ages, and it all comes back to you. So I have to correct you. I do apologise, JP.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, Millsy, we're educationalists, and that's why we need to be. So I apologise. I meant to say racking my brain.
And we make words up as well, so don't worry. Just carry on.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I've been racking my brain, and I wanted to make sure I actually named this player correctly. He's a Brighton winger. His name is Izquierdo. Okay. Do we feel that's been said correctly?
JP, I mean, have another go if you like.
I don't want to. Izquierdo. That worse.
Okay, that's fine.
Anyway.
I apologise if you're listening, by the way, because we're certainly not trying to poke fun. In fact, the only person we're poking fun at here is JP.
Is JP the voice, absolutely. But on a serious note, 5.9 million, so not the cheapest Steal or No Deal I've ever come up with. I wouldn't say that's very cheap for who he is. However, he's on 70. I think he's mid-70s on points, so he's a good point scorer. He's one of their star players. He's guaranteed football time. They've got a nice fixture against Everton, in my opinion. He looked unbelievable against Arsenal. I watched that game and I thought he was the best player on the pitch. Like, he was class. I think he's a nice little option to sort of free up a little bit of cash to get you sort of mid-range midfielders in. So I think he's a little bit of a steal, Mills. What do you think?
I think it's decent. I don't think it's the worst shout ever.
No.
I've not gone against you for a long time, JP.
You haven't, no.
But I am going to go against you this week, and it's not because you couldn't pronounce his name. It's the reason I'm going to go against you is for as bad as Everton have been of late, it's mainly been on their travels. I think their home form is you know, far superior to their away form, and I think actually Everton will probably get a result this week. I'm not saying Brighton won't score, and I'm not saying that he won't be involved. I just think nearly 6 million. it's not
Yeah.
it's not peanuts. So
No,
as a
no,
steal or no
yeah.
deal, I'm gonna say no deal.
No
JP.
deal. Fair enough. I wasn't filled with confidence with myself. I'll be honest.
Okay. Well, if you weren't filled with confidence with that, I don't know how you're feeling about Ask JP, but it's coming up.
I can't wait.
It's coming up right after this.
The Fantasy Football Edge Podcast, giving you the edge over your rivals.
So, JP, had time to collect your thoughts. How are you feeling about this Ask JP segment, which is fast becoming a fan's favourite?
Yeah, I mean, last week went well, so that makes me almost more nervous now. I've got a sort of reputation to uphold. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm excited mostly.
You did do pretty well. I think the one thing I would say is with last week's and probably the week before, you had a fair amount of sort of past history to bring
Yes.
up. You know, particularly last week, as long as you had a little bit of an idea as to who Rene Higuita was, you could actually talk a little bit about his style of play. And obviously you could talk about your own. You might struggle a bit more this week. I don't know. We'll see.
I'm worried.
But it's similar. It's similar. It's a compare question again. So we're going to go straight in, JP. And when I say go, the timer is going to start. Remember, 30 seconds. No prevaricating. No saying no pausing. No speaking slowly. And no talking utter nonsense.
Oh, God. I'm a bit nervous now.
That is going to be very difficult to not talk utter nonsense with this one. Right, Ask JP. Compare your own height to that of Fernando Llorente. Go.
Well, I'm clearly very, very short. I've always been short. I was short from a young age. I never really grew. I only grew once when I was about 15. However, Fernando Llorente is a very large man, very large indeed. I believe about 6'4". Now, in terms of football, this contributes to him scoring a wide range of goals, particularly with his head. I've only ever scored 5 headed goals in my life, 4 of which were basically tappings, so they don't really count. I believe Fernando Llorente probably scores about 60-70% of his goals with his head. I'm really struggling to think of anything else right now, Milty, so I'm now going to fill the time with utter nonsense, and I'm hoping that we're there in 3, 2, 1. Done.
Oh, JP, that is padding at its best.
God.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to give it to you. You do not approach that in any way in the sense of trying to pad and take it slowly. The speed of your delivery is phenomenal there. The fact that you actually speed up when you've got to speak for 30 seconds, I don't know what that says about you, but do you know what? Fair play. You do pretty well there. And is that true that you only grew at the age of 15? For a short period
So this has been my life. I was a midget until the age of 15. Then I grew like 10.5 inches in 1 year and was really tall for like 6 months, and then everyone else grew and I didn't. So yeah.
I love the fact that you know it was exactly 10.5 inches as well.
Well, I'm still bitter about it now.
Okay, good stuff. Right, so it feels a bit strange this week because we're not going into podcast extra time. We're just going to seamlessly sort of flow into that zone, which is where we're heading now. So I'm going to come to you, JP, for your captain picks for this week. Well, your captain pick. Are you gonna stick your neck out and actually go with? Well, not stick your neck out, but are you going to go with your Hazard shout for captain? Because I think it's a bold move if you do. I mean, heaven knows you need it. God knows you need these points. Let's be honest.
I need it. The worst part about this, Mills, is I don't actually have him. So he's not going to be my captain choice. My captain choice is one of the side tips tonight. It's Jamie Vardy. He's, like you say, we sort of mentioned why. I've got him as a striker. I don't think very few other people in the league have him, so he's a nice differential for me. Against West Brom, I think he's going to score, so I'm going Jamie Vardy. I
think it's a good shout. I think this could be a week. This could be one of those weeks where the players that do well every week don't.
Yes.
Spurs, like I said, Harry Kane's playing tonight. So are Spurs, all of the Spurs stars are playing tonight. Liverpool going to Man United, that could cancel each other out. Man City against Stoke should theoretically return a good result for City. Aguero probably will start because Jesus has started tonight, but you never know. You never know. So I think it's a decent shout. I'm going to go with Harry Kane though. I think he's due a goal. He's definitely due a goal. As long as he comes through unscathed tonight, I just fancy that game against Bournemouth because Bournemouth, they don't keep clean sheets. I was writing about it. The stats will be on Fantasy Football Edge, but I think it's been about 10 weeks since Bournemouth kept a clean sheet. They just don't keep clean sheets. So I'm going to go Harry Kane for sure. Right, JP. We're going to just almost ready to close out this week's pod. I think it's has it lived up to last week's standard?
I think so. I think it's been good. I've enjoyed it.
As long as one person has, that's all.
As long as I've enjoyed it, then it's fine.
Then yeah. Right, JP, we're not actually going to be back for game week 31 because it's almost a non-event, I suppose. And then we have a 2-week break until game week 32. So it's going to be a couple of weeks until people are hearing from us again. Any final thoughts on game week 31 before we go? Because some people will be listening to this and obviously definitely have a sort of one eye on that week. We've said previously that it could be the free hit week. I think I've changed my opinion on it.
Oh, right, okay. In what way?
Well, I've got free hit. I haven't got triple captain. I've got free hit and I've got bench boost. And initially I was thinking, do you know what? I might use free hit for game week 31 and maximise the players in that week. But I actually don't know if it's worth it because I've got 4 or 5 players in my team for that week. And I think I might just play out that week with 4 or 5 players because I'm looking at it and thinking, well, if I've got good Liverpool coverage in, probably 3 Liverpool players, and obviously Salah's going to be one, Firmino's going to be the other. I mean, if you can get Mane, brilliant. If not, then anyone will do really, probably a defensive player. I'm looking at the other teams, I'm thinking, I'm not seeing where the points are going to come from. It's difficult to pick them out. Like, you can find them, but I'm going to say, perhaps on average, you're probably going to get 3 points from each of those players that you're going to put in. So if I'm going to put 6 players in, I'm only going to get 18 points back off that from my free hit. Would I be better served using that free hit in the double game week? And I think, actually, I will. I think I will be. Because look at the teams that aren't playing this week. They're all going to have double game weeks. And it's most likely all going to fall within the same week. So, to me, I just think that might make a bit more sense.
I couldn't agree more. I think, like you say, that they're non-fixtures. They're like, bar the Liverpool-Watford game. The others, you're not going to put players in from those teams particularly. I think what you want to do at this stage, you want to think tactically long-term. Don't be erratic. Don't rush. Don't look at those fixtures and think, I need those players. I'm exactly like you, Millsy. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I really do.
Good stuff. It's just nice to know that you agree with me whatever I say, because obviously you went with me last time. You completely agreed when I said the opposite. So.
Absolutely. That's what we do.
What we do. Okay, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast as much as last week, and we will be back in advance of game week 32 after next week's non-event. We will see you then.
Bye-bye.
Did you just say you captained Jordan Henderson? Have a word with yourself.